Welcome to the third webinar in our series, the Skills for Success, which is looking at skills that are most important to employers and how to demonstrate and develop them. And actually this whole webinar series has been put together based on conversations that we've had with employers, but also based on some of your feedback and thoughts from previous webinars, so topics that you'd like us to cover. We always like hearing from you. This particular topic is about the power of networking. And it's one of 8 topics that we're covering as part of the series. Bit of a reminder there of the dates and times that we're doing the other sessions. And we are going to be running 2 live sessions of each webinar. But if you know of anyone who wasn't able to join, we will be uploading a recording of each webinar to our YouTube channel, SRS Recruitment and Employability Experts. And so we can probably pop that in the chat. So feel free to look up some of our webinars there. There's a lot of free resources on our YouTube channel. There's a lot of other webinars with relevant topics, such as preparing for assessment centres, finding your values, lots and lots of things. We love doing webinars. So the idea with these sessions is they are quite bite-sized, and I always like to say this at the start, and particularly this one, the power of networking. I'm personally actually attended a workshop for this quite a few years ago, but it was a 2-day workshop, which gives you some indication of the fact that of how much content there is this particular topic, and it's certainly one to explore further. But the aim of our sessions is to give you that overview and to provide you with particular advice and top tips that's relevant to being a student or a graduate. And we also really like it when you get involved. So some of our webinars have polls that you can get involved with. Some of them have some questions that we pose that we'd love you to type your response into the chat. So please do interact with us. It makes it that bit more interesting. We love to hear about your experiences and best practice. And at the end as well, we'll take any final questions. Zoe is going to be looking after the chat for me today, responding to your comments as I'm presenting, but certainly, as I say, we'll have that overall summary at the end as well. So a couple of introductions. Over the course of the webinar series, I will be joined by various colleagues from the SRS team. I'm personally the University Partnerships Manager for SRS. I work with a lot of students, a lot of graduates and universities to help prepare you for the working world, to help you secure that all-important graduate role or placement. And hopefully a few of you have seen me at previous events or previous webinars. See my social media details there on the screen. I'm really enjoying actually when I log off from a webinar. It's great when I've got a few LinkedIn invites and even a couple of questions posted. So please do feel free to connect with me on any of the social media platforms. Zoe, do you want to say hello?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Zoe. I'm the operations coordinator here at SRS. So I support with the facilitation of our university events and the content we create for students, such as these webinars, our YouTube channel, our social media channels. So yeah, as Helen said, I would also love to connect with you all and see everyone. So please do follow up on my social media details there on the page.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Zoe. Okay, so as part of today's webinar, we will be discussing the importance of networking and how this helps to create future opportunities. So this will include the overall advantages of networking, how to deliver an effective elevator pitch, the differences between online and in-person networking, and top tips on how to create and build your network. Now, there are a number of famous quotes about what networking means, some of which I've included here on the screen. Networking is marketing, marketing yourself, marketing your uniqueness, marketing what you stand for. It's about your own personal brand. Another expert in this area says that your network is your net worth. Quite like that one. And an alternative point of view is that networking is not just about connecting people. It's about connecting people with ideas and people with opportunities. So let's go into a little bit more detail about what it's all about. So networking is about creating and developing your professional and social contacts, usually where you've got some common ground or interests. It's the opportunity to share knowledge and ideas And most importantly, it's about creating mutually beneficial relationships. So it's not just about taking and asking for a job, it's also about giving and contributing, because when you help others, they're going to want to help you. And as a recent graduate, you might want to get a job as a result of networking, but you should be prepared to show what you can offer them in return by way of experience, ideas, or simply a student voice on different topics. Ultimately, networking should benefit everyone involved. Now, networking can happen online or in person, and we will explore the differences between these approaches later. It can be formal, often associated with professional settings such as conferences or career fairs where you're reaching out to employers. But it's also just as important in social settings such as university societies, clubs, or even family events. You should network with anyone and everyone. Never ignore an opportunity to meet someone new, because you never know when they or their network will be able to help you. There are so many advantages to networking. I actually struggled to hone this down. First and foremost is the positive impact that it will have on your profile. Attend events, connect or follow people online, contribute or comment on posts, articles or blogs. You can't progress or secure a role without first being noticed, and networking increases your chances of getting noticed. Regardless of whether or not you actually manage to progress your career, you'll still benefit from networking. Your exposure to new people, places, ideas, and information is going to mean that you learn and develop as an individual. It may be that you can get clued up on trends and issues in the sector that you're interested in, helping you with future job applications. And fresh ideas and different perspectives can also help shape your goals. Networking will also provide you with valuable support, and you should be open-minded about where the support can come from. So you don't just want to connect with employers, but other graduates and students can actually lead to some really productive discussions around common challenges and opportunities. You might be able to offer your own support and guidance as part of that reciprocal relationship. A networking relationship might one day lead to having a mentor or buddy who can support you with your career. And having a strong network is also evidence of your ability to communicate and build relationships, evidence which you can show and share with an employer as part of the recruitment process. Now, for all the reasons above and more, networking is an absolute must for career growth. And it may mean you're considered for roles that aren't advertised, or put in contact with a decision maker for roles that are. Ultimately, networking helps to make you more visible and memorable. Now, there are a number of top tips and techniques that apply to in-person and online networking, but I do want to start with one of the most important ones, which applies to both, and it is the elevator pitch. Now, before I talk about this, does anyone know or has come across the elevator pitch before? Does anyone want to post any comments in the chat? Anyone got an understanding of what it is before I go into detail about it? Andrea, thank you. Can you give me a little heads up of what your understanding of elevator pitch is? Yeah. Basically, you get your idea across in a span of time it would take on an elevator trip. Fantastic. That's exactly it. Spot on. We're going to have a little look at the elevator pitch. So, without a doubt, networking does become much simpler and easier if you have got an effective elevator pitch. It should be an interesting summary of yourself that is brief, basically the length of a short ride in an elevator, hence the name. As I say, some of you seem to be familiar with that already, which is great. Before creating your pitch, you need to ask yourself the following questions. What is your personal message? What do you want to achieve? What do you want people to remember about you? So when you meet that first person, or when you reach out to that new contact online, what is going to be in that elevator pitch, that brief summary that highlights you, that sums you up in a nutshell to that new person? When you've thought about these questions, you can then progress with structuring your elevator pitch around 4 key areas. Now, obviously, at the beginning, you need to start with an introduction. Who are you? What is your name? You then need to give some background, a short summary of what you've done and are doing now. And if possible, try and make this relevant or interesting for your audience. Show them what you can offer. No one wants to hear your entire career history, and certainly you wouldn't be able to do it within the space of an elevator pitch, but pick out the key bits that are going to stand out to your new audience, that are relevant for them. You should then move on to what it is you want, where the objective could be to learn about something, find a role, or perhaps your objective is to get contact details, their contact details more precisely. And you should then close with a call to action. Turn your objective into a question. Maybe you ask to join their network, or can they give you more information about opportunities in their organisation? That call to action is really important. So we're going to have a little look at some example pitches, which Zoe kindly recorded for me. I did say we'd be seeing a little bit more of her later on. So we're going to watch a little video of an elevator pitch. And when it's finished, I just want you to post some comments in the chat about your thoughts, your observations on this particular pitch.
Hello, I'm Zoe, and I've recently graduated from the University of Life with a degree in marketing. I have lots of experience in market research, and I enjoy working with others on different projects. I'm keen to find a role in advertising within a successful company.
Okay, so just moving across to the chat there. Having a think about that pitch, what are your thoughts? Was it good? Was it bad? What could have been done better? Anyone want to share any thoughts? Give it a go, someone there. Okay, someone's put, I think it's a good pitch, quite descriptive. Very straightforward and detailed. Accomplished all the major highlights, yeah. Someone's put good, she mentioned her goals. It's brief, yeah. Brevity is a good thing when it comes to elevator pitches. Someone's put spot on. You've got some very positive feedback there, Zoe. Well done. Okay, so you're right. There is some good things about that elevator pitch. Brevity is certainly one of them. Although I would argue there is perhaps a little bit more time. Again, it very much depends on your audience. It should be the length of an elevator ride. It may be, if you're in a particular conference, you may be able to expand upon it a little bit. And yes, you put it is spot on. It does mention some of her goals there. I think someone's put, it has mentioned, yep, some key highlights. But I would argue that this elevator pitch could be a lot better. It is a little bit generic. So think about the fact that Zoe says, I'm interested in an advertising position. That's quite broad. Doesn't really showcase what's unique about her. I'm not sure her personality comes across as well as it could. And one of the things it is really missing, it doesn't close on a question or doesn't have a natural lead in to a conversation. So going back to that point I made earlier about having that call to action at the end, it could be as simple as saying, what interests you about at this particular conference, or what are you hoping to learn, or can you tell me a bit more about what you do? It needs to have that question, that call to action at the end. Now I'm going to show you another example. Again, Zoe doing a little recording, slightly longer elevator pitch, but I'd just again like you to watch this and see what comments you think about this one.
Hello, I'm Zoe, and I've recently graduated from the University of Life with a 2-1 degree in marketing. I've always loved exploring ideas and designing new concepts, which has led to me becoming an experienced user of tools such as Adobe Spark and Padlo as part of my placement with SRS. Most recently, I was very proud to have created a new and interactive landing page that increased engagement with our student festival by 20%. I would be so excited to work in advertising, and I'm keen to hear about your experience in this area.
Okay, So that's our second example there. What comments have you got about that particular elevator pitch? Yeah, someone's put better, but isn't it too long? Yes, possibly. This isn't a perfect example by any means. Yeah, so there's a bit of a understanding that the second is better. Yeah, much more personality and detailed. Any other thoughts? She states the value she would bring to the company. Yes, absolutely. Very much so. Yeah. More details about relevant experience. Yes, yes. She's focused in on what she can bring. I like that. Much better if it depends on how long she's in the lift for. I do like that. Yeah. Yeah, you see more of a personality. It does naturally lead into a question, to a conversation at the end. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, you're all spot on there. And you're absolutely right. It could be perhaps a little bit long. And that's the thing, when you're preparing your elevator pitch, you'll have like a standard model that you use. And depending on what event you're at or what platform you're on, you might be able to build in a little bit more detail, or it just might not be appropriate. It might need to be short, sharp, and more succinct. Certainly, if you're reaching out to someone on an online platform, particularly if it's a written elevator pitch, you want it to be shorter. Yeah, what was good about this was, yeah, it was a lot more informative. It felt like we were seeing more of Zoe as an individual. She nicely slots in relevant work experience. So she mentions having a placement at SRS, nicely mentions some key skills, relevant achievements. There was a bit of quantitative data in there. I managed to increase this by 20%, and that's something that really sticks in my head when something as tangible as that gets mentioned. The enthusiasm comes across a bit more. So there was a few declarative statements in there, such as, I've always loved doing this, you know. So when you're injecting that passion into your voice, into your tone of voice, it just helps emphasize what you're trying to say. And it also doesn't just focus on what she has done, but why she's done it. So she might be a marketing student at the University of Life, which she mentioned in both pitches, but it was only the second pitch where it was clear that she did it because she's always loved doing that kind of thing. You know, she was explaining the why she wants to go into advertising. She was much more expressive with her hands as well, and I can't stress that enough. We're going to look at body language a little bit later on, but particularly when you do meet someone, the importance of things like eye contact and using your hands to kind of express that enthusiasm. And yeah, as a few of you have picked up there, very clear what the objective is, that she's looking for that role advertising, and she invites the person to share their experience to show how they can help. So it naturally leads in to the other person introducing themselves and making that link. So it was a better pitch. I'm not saying it was perfect, but there was a lot that was stronger about that particular example. And it just goes back to that one of those earlier quotes at the beginning of the webinar about networking is marketing. It is marketing yourself. What is your personal brand? What are you selling to that new person, to that new contact or employer? Now, your pitch will always change depending on your audience and what your objective is. And I just wanted to throw one other example out there, because if you're at a conference with advertising professionals, so Zoe's gone to there because she's interested in that industry, your objective might actually be not to find a job, but to actually learn more about the industry and also kind of show off your own knowledge at the same time. So your pitch might be slightly different. It'd be something a bit like this next one that I'll play for you.
Hello, I'm Zoe, and I've recently graduated from the University of Life with a 2-1 degree in marketing. I've always loved exploring ideas and designing new concepts, which is why I jumped at the chance to come to this conference and see how VR marketing is bridging the gap between experience and action. What are you hoping to learn today?
Okay, so just to give you another example there, really, the fact that she's just actually looking to build connections, to share knowledge with people, but she's also at the same time slipped in there that she knows stuff about the industry. You know, what is the impact of virtual reality on this? She's showing that she has already done some homework, which to me, as the audience, would suggest that, oh, this person is genuinely interested. This person's worth talking to. But that's just to give you another example. And the pitches you've heard, they've been aimed at broader kind of networking opportunities. But there will be opportunities to tailor your pitch, especially if you're targeting particular organisations at a career fair, for example. So if there were a couple of employers that you knew were going to be there, you'd probably use the same model, but you'd slip in there something around about them. So you'd say, I've seen at IBM that you're doing this. I'll be really keen to know more about that. You'd slip in something that's a bit more tailored to them. You might also repurpose your elevator pitch to be the basis of your answer to the tell me about yourself question in an interview. It's a great start for that. Obviously, you probably want to go into more detail, give a more extensive answer when you're in an interview, but you can certainly use that as your starting point once you've got that elevator pitch in place. So in terms of top tips for delivering an effective elevator pitch, be authentic. Really important point in that one. Don't make stuff up or pretend to show interest in something you're not. You can often tell when people aren't being genuine, and it is likely that you'll probably get caught out at some point. Be conversational and remember that you're telling a story about you. And I know it can be hard when you do your first elevator pitch for the first time. It might feel a little bit stilted, a little bit formal, but it does get easier the more you do it. It does become more of that two-way conversation. Be concise, don't waffle, go off on a tangent or make it too wordy. And you need to get across a clear and simple message. Take your time when delivering your pitch. Don't talk too fast. And when you are preparing that elevator pitch, think about natural pause points. So perhaps when you've finished, when you've mentioned a particular achievement, pause before starting your next sentence. As I say, don't rush through it. It's important to come across as personable and confident, not just in what you're saying, but how you're saying it. Think about your tone of voice and how you can demonstrate that positive body language. So for all of those pitches, Zoe sounded fairly confident, and certainly enthusiastic in some of the later ones. I have met some people over the years, some very experienced people in their sectors who, you know, I've introduced myself and they've said, oh, hello, I'm Jack Rogers. I work in marketing and I've done this and that. You know, it's that tone of voice, which is so important for a person to actually sit up, listen and pay attention to what you're saying. And finally, practice your elevator pitch so that it sounds natural on the day rather than a rehearsed script. Make sure you read it out loud to see what it sounds like. Think about the words you want to emphasize and seek feedback from others. And at times you will have to revisit your pitch so that you can adapt it to a different audience or perhaps update it with your latest and best achievements. So it does take a little bit of initial work to perfect that elevator pitch, to get it in place. But once you have done that, it will get easier. And it is such an important part of networking because an elevator pitch, you're basically showing people that you know what you want and you know how to ask for it. Let's now more specifically look at networking in person and some top tips relevant to this. Thinking about your overall objective, who do you want to talk to? If possible, it's important to review the names of who will be attending in advance of the event, and more specifically, with regards to career fairs, identify the employers that you most want to talk to. You can then research these people by checking out their LinkedIn profiles or research the organisation, perhaps identifying possible points for discussion, questions or common interests. And this level of preparation will mean that you come across as more enthusiastic and interesting. And actually, as part of my day job, I do attend a lot of conferences in different sectors, and I always make a point of asking about who the attendees are. I want to see who's going to be there, so I can identify who I most want to talk to, who's some new people that I can potentially approach. And I will connect with them in advance of the event sometimes to say, oh, I've seen that you're attending this conference on such and such a date. It would be great to meet you. Perhaps we can have a chat about this and such and such. Now, usually an in-person career fair will have desks or booths that you can approach where people are actually ready. They're ready and waiting to talk to you. But how do you approach people you don't know at a conference where there's no actual clear entry points. So a few tips about this. So if you walk into a room and there's about 100 people in there all milling about, get yourself a drink or refreshment. Use this as an opportunity to look around the room and get a feel for what's going on. You might want to start by identifying individuals who are also on their own and therefore perhaps easier to approach. In which case you could start with a simple introduction such as, "Hi, I'm Helen, would you mind if I join you?" You can then go on to talk about travel or the weather, which is often the case, before doing your elevator pitch. Now, the next step from this would be to identify which groups of people are closed or open for you to join their discussion. So thinking about a closed group, it might be where there are a couple of people who are talking directly to each other and look to be having quite a serious discussion. Therefore, it's going to be inappropriate for you to barge into that. Alternatively, there might be other couples where their body language is more open. And someone once described this to me as a triangle, where two people are faced slightly outwards and there's a space for you to occupy the third angle of the triangle, or for bigger groups, the fourth corner of the square. For larger groups, you might be able to catch the eye of the prime leader and smile at them, which gives you an opportunity to go over. But who you decide to approach will very much depend on how confident and comfortable you're feeling. It is perfectly fine to start small, and from this to keep practicing and building on what you've done before. So thinking about walking into a room full of new people, you might want to start with those individuals. Those people who are also on their own, they'll be the ones to target first. When you do start talking with someone new, it's very important to demonstrate positive body language, both when you're talking and when you're listening. And I wanted to focus in on this point in particular, because it doesn't matter what you say if your body language isn't right. And to start with some of the more obvious points, you'll want to smile, make consistent eye contact, and have a firm handshake if COVID allows. Hand gestures are also very important. And a study of the most unpopular and popular TED Talks by Holler and Beatty showed that hand gestures increase the value of someone's message by 60%. So using your hands to emphasize key points as you're talking, that's very important. You don't want to be flapping your hands around constantly, but it's just to kind of stress those achievements or stress a particular point that you're making. These will all help to build that relationship, but remember that these points apply to when you're listening and not just when you're talking. You must present yourself as an active listener who is genuinely interested in what other people have to say. Now, you can do this by nodding, reacting to particular comments, using your eyebrows to show emotion, and often tilting your head to one side shows that you're listening. And make sure your interest is matched by your facial expressions. You might then want to confirm your understanding of what they just said, or ask a question based on some information they've just given you, and that shows that you've listened. So just some overall top tips there to think about with body language. Let's move on to look at online networking. Now, there are a number of professional networking sites. LinkedIn is certainly one of the biggest and best known. And this is probably the one that we'll focus on, but our tips will apply to lots of other sites. Now, you might be daunted by the prospect of joining LinkedIn, let alone posting or commenting on it. But remember, everyone started at that point where they only had one connection. And actually, in the current climate, I think you'll find people are actually a lot more sympathetic to invitations to connect. So firstly, you might be able to use a written version of your elevator pitch as part of your online profile. This can help recruiters find you and result in better quality connections because contacts can hone in on your key skills, your interests, and your experience. And I do see a lot of profiles where it has a student's name and it's like, it says something like University of Liverpool student. You know, you can build on that a lot more. There's a lot of other University of Liverpool students. What's different about you? What are you interested in? Now, I should say that if you wanted to find out more about setting up your online profile, we do have another webinar, our YouTube channel, called Developing Your Online Presence. So I'm not going to go into lots of detail about setting up your profile on LinkedIn here because we have covered that off before. As part of this webinar, we'll look at, you should identify who to network with, remembering that who is in your network is much more important than how many connections you have. And to connect with people you don't know, consider following them first. You can then start to comment on their posts and have something to mention in a subsequent invite. So when you do connect with them, you can say, oh, I've seen this on your post. I found that really interesting. And it just shows that you're actually interested rather than just randomly connecting with people. Your invites should always be personalized and provide context on why you're connecting with them. Perhaps you're interested in their experience, or you're hoping to broaden your understanding of a particular sector. And once you have a network, you can actually reach out to your connections and ask them if they're able to make an introduction for you or recommend another connection. It kind of all comes from there. And this is something you should definitely reciprocate when asked. It's also important to maintain this network and be an active member. Do regular posts and like or comment on other people's. Otherwise, you're not networking, because it isn't enough to just be on LinkedIn. And to help with this, you could set yourself targets to connect with a new person each day, or a new post every week, for example. Just try and keep it regular, whatever targets you decide. So I'm now going to hand you over to Zoe to look at some overall top tips for networking in general.
Thank you, Helen. Yes, so Helen's just talked through some tips for in-person and online networking. So let's just finish by looking at some overall top tips. So firstly, when you're looking for a job, it's tempting to go after as many connections as you can. Instead, it's much better to target those connections and groups that best fit your needs and interests. Once you join a networking group, make sure you're an active member who shares their opinions and is asking questions. For example, when you're at a meeting, remember to be engaged rather than just physically present. Your contribution also needs to be consistent, and so wherever possible, always attend these meetings. It will take time to build and maintain relationships where you might not always see the benefit in the short term. However, it's important to keep in touch, because if you haven't interacted with a particular contact in a while, coming out of the blue and asking for a job will probably not go down very well. Remember that the relationship is a reciprocal one, where you will get out of it what you put into it. Although you might not feel you have everything to offer at this early stage in your career, just try and show your support for some of their ideas and posts, for example, rather than always asking for information or opportunities. Make sure that you are listening as much as you speak. And just some more top tips here. So your interactions need to be friendly, focused, and frequent, but you can take your time over them, and it's important not to rush a conversation and push for a job or connection before it's appropriate. Identify the right time and opportunity in which to ask for help, because ultimately you do want to gain something from the relationship as well as offering something back. Some people find it difficult to ask, but you'll be surprised how helpful people can be when you do. It certainly helps to keep yourself informed about key topics or issues that will highlight your credibility as someone who's genuinely interested in a particular area or organisation. You should also extend this level of interest to personal details about your contact. You want to be remembered, and so show that you remember them and what they are dealing with. For example, after a networking event, it's a good idea to list the people you spoke to and note down any particular things they mentioned. This means that when you next see them, you'll remember to ask them about a particular project they were working on or what university their son got accepted into. This shows that you have really listened to them. Having this as a point of reference will also mean that you're better placed to follow up with these people, to link in with them or send them your CV, for example. Finally, our last top tip is to be realistic and not be too hard on yourself. Not everyone is natural at networking, but at the same time, you don't have to be a complete extrovert to excel at it. Take time to practice and perfect your approach. Be patient and be persistent.
Thanks very much, Zoe. Okay, so let's have a look. Finish by looking at some networking opportunities, because there are so many opportunities out there to network and to practice networking. Now, I've already mentioned LinkedIn, but there are lots of other online groups and communities. You might even want to take the initiative and set one up. Some of these platforms also offer some great free content on how to effectively network, such as LinkedIn Learning, YouTube videos, and even TikTok. There is bound to be some local networking events you can attend, whether that's meetings, societies, or programs offered by your university. And there are certainly a number of professional mentoring programs, and in a lot of cases, your university can put you in touch with alumni in a sector that you're interested in. Finally, you should never underestimate your existing network of family and friends who may have contacts and experience that can help you. Take any opportunity to network, going back to that point around always embracing the opportunity to meet someone new. I always like to finish on a bit of a quote in the webinars, and this one here: the time to build a network is always before you need one. So what I'm saying here is, don't wait until you start your job to begin properly networking. It's never too soon or too late to begin. Just make that start. And a fellow student who you connect with now, they might actually turn into a potential client in a future role. Who knows? And another part of these webinars, I like to leave you with a couple of questions to think about as well. Who do you want to connect with and why? And what opportunities are there for you to connect with new people? Definitely explore this with your university, because I have seen some fantastic programs, talks, societies that will provide you with those opportunities. Now that brings us to the end of the webinar. I know Zoe's been responding to some questions already in the chat. Is there anything outstanding? Any common themes, Zoe?
Just firstly, a point that we've just been having a bit of a discussion there, that a good way to put into practice some of the learning from this webinar would be to start connecting with myself and you, Helen, on LinkedIn, maybe doing some posts about the webinar, getting some discussion and networking going that way as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, please do link in with us. Say hello on an invite as well. I get a lot of requests from people to connect with me. Very few of them take the trouble to write an invite, which I think is quite important. And certainly do that if you're connecting with an employer.
Yes,
yeah, we'd love to see you.
A question for you, Helen, as well. Could you give any examples of questions which it might be good to use when networking to help you sort of establish those meaningful relationships?
So it very much depends on your audience and where you are at. So depending on your audience, it might always be appropriate to be explicit and say, I'm looking for a job in this area. Have you got any opportunities? It may be at a careers fair, but in other cases not so much. So it might be you might want to just tone it down a little bit to say, can you tell me a bit more about some of the opportunities that are currently available in your organisation or will be available? How is your organisation looking to expand and develop over the next few years? Or if you're at a particular conference, can you tell me about some of the challenges you've encountered? You're asking them a question that is going to require a response from them, and most people like to talk about themselves, or at least like to talk about what they're up to, what they're working on. So yeah, those questions are going to be very much depend on your audience and your objective. If you're not explicitly looking for a role and you just want to meet people and form connections, So when I was at a conference recently, I did my elevator pitch, and I finished it by saying, you know, I'm keen to meet people working in this area, to share best practice, to discuss ideas. How would you feel about us linking in? How would you feel about carrying on this conversation online? It depends on what you're trying to get from that conversation. I suppose the call to action bit at the end of the elevator pitch will be the bit that changes depending on what event you're at. The core of the elevator pitch around your introduction, your key experience, who you are, is probably the bit that will change a lot less. Hopefully that goes some way to answering your question, but please feel free to reach out on LinkedIn if you want a bit more detail on that.
Great. And just one of the other sort of common themes that we were discussing in relation to the elevator pitch was sort of where this can be used, and just remembering that it can be used in person, but also online networking. So like you mentioned, Helen, on your actual LinkedIn profile, but then also when you're sending those connection requests or sending messages to people, that the elevator pitch is a really strong tool in that environment as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and as I say, you might tailor a little bit. So on your LinkedIn profile, it's I've seen some LinkedIn profiles that are really good, that are a bit longer than most, but because they are so, this is me, this is what I'm all about, they do grab you. But overall, you probably do want to trim it down a bit for when you're doing it online. But yeah, your elevator pitch is going to help you with so many things, and that interview question as well. Tell me about yourself. Great starter for that. Yeah.
Oh, and we just had one more question come through. How can I manage my time by building connections and showing interest, and work on myself and build myself up?
So there's a lot there, isn't there? It is about being quite disciplined. So I've got quite a busy day job, and I struggle to keep on top of social media, but I do make a point of spending half an hour on LinkedIn every day, and looking to make at least one new connection every day. You know, just as small as that, really. It is about being disciplined and about booking that time in, because let's be honest, there's always going to be something more important. There's going to be some pressing deadline or some assignment you need to write that's going to take priority. But networking and self-development is ultimately going to have that long-term impact, and you need to find the time, whether it might not be every day, but at least weekly, where you can take some time out to reflect on your development and to think about your next steps and how you're going to build your network. Maybe, as I say, I've mentioned your university a couple of times. They do have some fantastic resources that could start you on that direction. I'm sure there's plenty of careers professionals who would have that one-to-one chat with you about almost where to start, which could be as simple as them putting you in touch with someone who used to be a student at university who works in the area that you're interested in. You know, that's a great start. And then it would lead to perhaps you having a regular conversation with that person, something like that.
Great. Yeah, I think that looks like all of the questions for now.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, thank you very much for getting involved with that particular webinar, for posting your comments, asking the questions and so on. Great to see so many of you this afternoon. And as I say, if there's any questions we haven't answered, I've just seen one that's come in there. How do we go about mentoring? Do you mean mentoring others or finding a mentor? Because yeah, there's in terms of finding a mentor, your university could help with that, or there might be people you can reach out to in your family and friends even. But yeah, in terms of you yourself mentoring, there's definitely lots of opportunities out there to do that. But yeah, please do reach out to us on social media, as I say, for any particular questions. But thank you very much. When you do come out of this webinar, it will take you to a very short survey. It takes literally 2 minutes. We just really appreciate your feedback on that. Thank you. See you on future webinars, I hope.